Welcome to Sullivan Street, and wow, another special time, Chris. We're in the middle of, I can't help myself, a long December,
Yep.
and it's pretty cool couple years for Counting Crows fans. We had the unauthorized biography come out with Jeff Harkness, Ring King. We have an authorized biography in the works with James Campion and Adam. We have our podcast that started 2.5 years
Of course.
ago. But this is it. So now, and of course,
New
the
album
first
and
new
tours and all
album.
sorts of
Yeah,
fun stuff
yeah, the
happening.
new
Yeah.
album, first in 10 years. And now we have the first official that I know of, Counting Crows film documentary coming out December 18th, probably out by the time you hear this on HBO Films. And that was by executive producer Bill Simmons, directed by Amy Scott, as part of the HBO original Music Box series, Counting Crows, Have You Seen Me Lately? And today on the show, Chris, we're going to be interviewing Amy.
Hi,
So,
guys.
yeah, Amy,
Welcome.
thank you for joining us on the pod. We are so thrilled to have you,
My
and what
pleasure.
what a unique time. The only housekeeping I want to do before we start asking you a couple questions about the making of this is for those that either haven't had a chance to read it, or for those maybe listening to this a couple years from now who, oh, I didn't know about this. I'll do a very quick synopsis of the film and a very quick bio on yourself. So, Counting Crows, Have You Seen Me Lately? Uh, Premiered this year. By the way, Chris has watched it twice. I have not watched it at all, so we get both perspectives.
Great, great.
And premiered a couple months ago at Tribeca. So catapulted into overnight, not sure if that's a pun or not, but catapulted into overnight fame by their massively successful debut album, San Francisco indie rock band Counting Crows and their introspective frontman Adam Duritz were suddenly the biggest rock stars in the world, defiantly facing whatever came next. Counting Crows, Have You Seen Me Lately captures this pivotal crossroads through revealing interviews and evocative 1990s archival footage to craft a rare story of artistic integrity in the spotlight, directed by Amy Scott. And just to emphasize, from what I understand, this really focuses on that time between. Of course, they talk about before and after, but that time between August and selling millions and becoming a worldwide sensation, and recovering the satellites, and dealing with some of Adam's emotional challenges and creative pressures. And for those that don't know, this is why this week, and Amy, if you didn't know that, they released a bunch of Recovering the Satellites merchandise in their
Oh
store
yeah.
to
Oh
coincide
yeah.
with this. And just in case Amy doesn't do it, Amy is a filmmaker based in LA, born and raised in Oklahoma, and spent formative years in Chicago. And to be very clear, this is not her first foray into music documentaries. In particular, did one on Sheryl Crow and TV series on Melissa Etheridge. And last comment would be that Amy directed a 2018 documentary about filmmaker Hal Ashby called Hal. And what really struck me is in the synopsis is that one of the lines is the film, basically uncovers or talks about Ashby's uncompromising nature played out
Very
as a
nice.
cautionary tale of art versus commerce. And
Uh-huh.
I have not seen the film yet, but if this theme did not come up with
Uh,
Adam and Recovering the Satellites, I would be really surprised.
I think I could just copy paste that log line and
Yeah.
go with that. Uh, had not made that direct connection yet, but yes, there is a theme of individuals that I find fascinating.
Yeah.
So,
So, Amy, there's two questions we basically, have to ask. One of them being just, despite your background, there's a lot of other people with music documentary backgrounds. How did you get involved in this project?
um, well, first of all, I just want to say I'm extremely lucky and fortunate. This is, these projects that find their way to you are a dream to work on. So I was in touch with, I love Bill Simmons. I love everything Bill Simmons has done, the whole 30 for 30 series. I think he's a phenomenal storyteller. His podcast, the whole enchilada bake that Bill Simmons
Yeah.
does, I find wildly fascinating. So I was in touch with the folks at Ringer to I wanted to do a film. And so we were kicking around ideas for probably a year before this came about. And then Bill said, "Hey, listen, I don't know if you're a fan or you would have interest, but I interviewed Adam and it was a really robust conversation and I think it would make a really good film. So listen to the interview and let me know what you think." And I of course was like, are you kidding me? Absolutely, yes. So I think that Bill had seen Michelle Crow documentary and responded to that. And then when I got on a Zoom with Adam, as you guys know, he's a cinephile.
Mm.
Yeah.
He's a incredibly astute movie watcher, and he had seen the Hal Ashby doc and really responded to that. And so I think that's how I got in the door. It was just very, very, very lucky.
As happens with that. So I know I think you talked about this when Chris saw your panel at the Tribeca, but I guess fans would want to know what did you know, like, etc., anything about Counting Crows music before starting the process, you know?
Yeah. So like I said, I'm not like a super fan. So in a way that was helpful because I think that you can approach something like this more from a story and a humanist perspective.
Hmm.
And I would have it would have been heartbreaking if I had been more. I mean, now I'm obviously even more of a fan and have more knowledge about the band, but I think if I had approached it from that perspective, it would have been extra heartbreaking to not have to not cover other eras and music and all that. So it's like truncating it down to, and we only cover the first two records in this
Mhm.
film.
Yep.
So, and to tell you the truth, that those were the records that I knew. Obviously, I'm aware of their entire catalog. But like I graduated high school in the mid '90s, so it's like you can't not know who
Right.
Mm.
that band was. Like, um, because we had all had a different relationship with radio at that time and MTV and VH1 and all that. So, and Adam, as we say in the kind of make this point in the film, is such a recognizable person. That
Yes.
Uh,
there's nobody that looked like him or sounded like him, or was an anomaly that really stood out in that era. So yeah, I was a fan of the early stuff, and then aware of later music, and I knew that he had dealt with just struggled with the issues of fame. I knew that about him, or I'd read that a few years ago. This is when I started the film. This is kind of all I knew. It was like, yeah, Adam had talked about mental health in a way that people weren't necessarily talking about. I think he's one of the folks that like destigmatized even having this conversation in pop culture, which I thought was really cool. And that's about all I knew.
No, that's great because I mean as someone who dabbled a little bit of studying film, I know that with documentaries that's always it's not even a moral, it's just always an interesting choice. Do you choose somebody as a director who knows the topic very intimately and has different thoughts? Do you have someone who has some knowledge of the topic or someone that doesn't know anything and then comes in right and just kind
Yeah.
of explores themselves? So
yeah.
Bill, Bill Simmons said this is a music box series film. And so he has a vision with that. It's a
mm,
curated vision, and it's not it covers artists, and it covers like a moment in time or an event or some crucible of game changery,
Mhm.
and
okay.
so it's not a it's not a cradle to grave kind of comprehensive. So I think I think when he was looking at the films that I've made and maybe my approach, I think that was like, okay, this kid can tell a story that's like maybe suits his vision for the series a little bit more.
Well,
Was
thank you.
the
Yeah.
was the goal always to cover like the first two records, or did the vision either expand or contract over the course of the
No,
process?
that was it was August and everything after, and how that record just shot them into the stratosphere, shot them into space at that time, just from this little band in Oakland, this little hippie band, and
Yeah.
then just shot into the stratosphere of fame. And then what came after that, how he handled it, how he navigated that, what kind of an artist he was, and how all of those things sort of were manifested in recovering the satellites, which I don't know what Adam's favorite record is, but I know that it's very close, very near to his heart. It's a very important record to him. So
Absolutely. Yeah, you got me thinking suddenly when you were talking about dread, and I know you mentioned the dreads in the film, even though I haven't seen it. But I was just thinking when you said that he is one of the when he had the dreads,
yeah.
maybe the most recognizable or one of the top 10 of music artists. I wonder how much now without the dreads can he actually have a day of going shopping at the corner store where somebody doesn't recognize him now. I'm not sure,
It's
but
probably a little easier, but he's
Yeah.
still like a very striking individual, you know.
yeah.
It's like
I,
he's yeah, I think I would recognize him if I saw him,
yeah.
you know.
Okay. Chris, did you have a follow-up
Sure.
or next question?
Also really curious in terms of, so it's interesting you mentioned in terms of your process, right? That you kind of started listening to, an interview with Adam. And having seen sort of the documentary, one of the things I really liked about it was that the perspectives were a lot broader, that you did really include the rest of the perspective of sort of the rest of the band. Because
Yeah.
normally, Adam's someone who gets to tell his story somewhat frequently on podcasts and other media. And so I really love that we kind of brought that in. So what was that like in terms of, going from, I assume, talking with Adam first to
Yeah.
sort of expanding that perspective?
Yeah, the band, and I think Adam would say the same thing. They were so cool and so funny, and each one of those guys could have their own documentary. I
Hmm.
mean, honestly, like their body of work as individual artists. I mean, I was like a Camper Van Beethoven
Oh
fan.
wow. Okay.
Like
Yeah.
meeting Emmergluck was like I was trying to be cool, you know, like don't it rarely happens because I've interviewed a lot of celebrities, but there's individuals that, and it's usually with musicians. I'm just like, dang, I wish that there was a long list of people that I wish that we could have included.
Mm,
And we did interview the current band too. Those guys, Millard and Jim. I mean, they're so funny and their stories were incredible. But
Hmm.
because they weren't in the band for the period of time that we covered, it didn't make sense. And we had them in the film and we were like, oh, this is heartbreaking. I have to take these guys out because they're so awesome. Um, but yeah, I was Adam first, obviously, spent a lot of time with him. I he's an incredibly private person, and so for him to let us, I mean, we filmed it in that's his house, that
mm,
lives, and he was so generous, him and Zoe both, to open their home and let a film crew in, and they had to move all of this furniture. And like I said, he's a collector, so he's got the coolest collections of, you know, music and instruments and art and like books everywhere. And then there's a whole other side of the house, it's film. So it was just the fact that he let us in for that long of a time speaks to what kind of a person he is. And then we would, sort of map out like, okay, you got to talk to this person, you got to talk to this person. They're going to tell you this perspective. He never dictated anything to
Hmm.
me in terms of like, oh, that person can't be in it or this it was like very like, hey man, this is I can give you a roadmap and you figure out the route. So it was a yeah, pretty special thing.
no,
Not everybody's like that.
I agree with yeah, and thanks for sharing that. I agree with Chris that I think for just for music fans in general or casual fans, they're going to want to hear about Adam. They're going to want to a lot of them maybe bought August and didn't buy Recovering actually, and they'll
Yeah.
be interested in this. And then they'll probably
Statistics
go
say
out
there's
and
about 5.5 million people who
right,
that
they
was true.
didn't. Yeah, and then they'll probably go out and hopefully go out and buy it after listening to you. But I agree with the fans of like our podcast who know Counting Crows,
Oh yeah.
front to back.
Front
What
to back.
they are really interested in hearing from the other band members because Adam
Yeah.
does get a lot of exposure, and except for Emmy and to a much lesser extent Jim, who's not in the documentary, we don't get to hear their stories very much.
Yeah.
And so we're really looking forward to that. When you did do that, logistically. Did you set up, a week and they all came, or did you have to visit them in all their houses, or were they recording at the time for the other
Yep.
band
Yeah,
members?
no, you guys are gonna. Well, we were around them in different, like, but they live all over. They don't all live
Right.
in
Exactly.
New York, or
Yeah.
they're all over the place. And they were on tour constantly. So it was really like, oh, where can we get, when can we cap, what now? And
Okay.
we figured out there was a time when we were all crossing paths. I wanted to film, we did film the show at Red Rocks that they did. And so we knew, okay, if we post, they were there for longer than we were working with the band's manager to kind of figure out, because you don't want to show up with a film crew at the end of the tour. They're so tired. They don't,
Yep.
it's like you're going to be really strategic about, setting up this time. And so we figured out they were going to be in Denver for a handful of days. And we were like, hey, can we post up at the hotel you guys are staying at, and we won't be annoying, but we'll just carve out some space. And when you have time, so we kind of set up the situation where they would rotate through and we talked to them. The the hotel happened to be the Four Seasons, which I'm a girl from Oklahoma, so I had not stayed in the Four Seasons for any period of my life, let alone like 3 or 4 days. I was like, oh my God, there's a phone in the bathroom. Like, what do you do with this? It's so wild. So I was on cloud nine. But getting to know those guys, and then we interviewed. I think we actually interviewed Emmy, David and Immergluck, and there was a handful of folks in LA too. So we did kind
Right.
of split it up a little bit there. But yeah, that's how that came about. And I can tell you, like, I wish that I had more time with them, and they were really generous, and we got a lot of time. But I think that, like you say, that and I think that Adam would have loved to even have more of he doesn't want to be the guy with the microphone. He's like, let them talk. He's been doing this shit for so long. And that's not his personality type. So, but like talking to Bryson, like getting his perspective was
Yeah.
fascinating. And they're all, and then Charlie's got a real, he's got a real presence, like on
Oh
camera.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, this guy's like, he's like James Dean or Chris Isaac. I mean, he just has this way about him that he could be a film star. And his delivery is just incredible. And he would nail these stories, and then he'd hold. I was like, man, this guy's is he an actor? Like, how does he know how to deliver like this?
And a super high IQ too. If
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, all of them unique individuals that are, really brilliant, exceptionally brilliant minds. And then Immerglug, I just geeked out with him before we even hit record. I think I talked to him. No, this is on camera because I was like,
yeah.
oh God, I'm almost
Yeah.
embarrassed. But we just shot the shit about music for, bonded over Captain Beefheart. I have a mug, a Captain Beefheart mug I need to give him for Christmas. But he's, you know, uh, a real, like, he's a head. He's like a music head. They all are. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, Amy, we'll plug that about a year and a half ago we interviewed David Lowery on the podcast. So and he
oh,
talked a little bit about Camper Van Beethoven.
oh,
So
cool.
might be worth
Cool, cool.
listening to that episode.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
But I will say, and I will emphasize, if anyone who's like listening to this hasn't seen the documentary yet, I think the perspective that they bring fills in like so many dots, I think, in especially that story, the stories of like August and everything after. And just sort of, I mean, again, you always hear the perspective of, well, we were kind of a band, we hadn't figured it out yet, and Adam had to, bring everyone together and kind of give this perspective. And you get these pieces from Charlie and Dave Bryson, that are so affecting when Dave is talking about like what that was like for it to go from a partnership with the two of them to Adam being in charge. There's a great like Bryson quote where you ask him like something like how does it work? It's like, well, Adam makes decisions, and it's okay. Sometimes it's not. Mostly it's okay. And you're like, you get so much
You get
in that
so
sense.
much in a handful of words strung together in order. We were just hanging on. I'm like, oh, wow, okay, and like it's my job, and I'm also just not interested in exploiting a situation or trying to be like, reality produce your way through. Like, ooh, tell me more about the conflict because that's just not the deal. But it's like it's a marriage. These guys been married to each other for
Yeah.
a very long time, and in a marriage, you're gonna have some pregnant pauses in in your stories. So it was so fascinating
And
to.
they have not taken, if you consider that most of the band is still together, for years, that they have not taken a lot of time off. I mean, I know people are
No,
like, well, there's bigger gaps between albums, but it's not like they stop touring for 5 years and then get a break from each other. Like you said, it really is a long-term marriage.
it is. Yeah.
For
And making
complete,
records, making records, making records,
yeah.
making records, consistently putting out music and performing and you know, elevate elevating and yeah, musicians are fascinating to me.
Uh,
Fascinating individuals.
just for completeness and for those listening that so Amy, from what I understand, interviewed all of the current members who were involved in recovering the satellites, and then also interviewed Matt Malley, who was the bassist during
Mhm.
recovering, who's no
Yeah.
longer
Mhm.
with the band. Did you?
We actually didn't get Ben Mize, and
That's what I was going to say. Did
we
you
wanted to get
consider
Ben.
or?
Oh, definitely.
Okay,
We kind of we ran out of time and money, I think.
okay.
I think it was I'm trying to remember, but we were coming for Ben, and it was like, you have to stop at some point. But it would have been great to have him. Matt Malley was finding Matt was great too. I wasn't sure how that was going to work, and that was a really he was also really gracious and come over to my studio and set up and film in here and was just a total sweetheart. Dug
Yeah,
for
we
our Bible. Yeah.
yeah we've been able to interview him, and
Yeah.
that's the word that I would say, gracious. That
Great doll.
and just a good interview. So
Great
yeah.
interview.
Who else was other than Ben? Was there anyone else that was sort of top of your list that just sort of like that kind of didn't get in or that?
I would have liked to have interviewed some more of the record label folks from
Hmm.
the early days to get that kind of perspective. That would have been, you know, it would have been cool. Trying to think. On the personal level, it kept coming up that like, do we try to track down the cast of Friends? And it didn't seem like an interesting story to follow up in that way.
Hmm.
Like I think like the women that we included in the film are like Adam's sister, Sarah,
Mm.
Pantera Sarah, and
Hmm.
Shannon McManus from the Viper Room, and then of course Mary Louise Parker, and Zoe. It was like I think we're good on the statement that I wanted to be making, that I don't need to go and find Courtney Cox or find.
Right.
I don't think Adam would want that in his movie. Like, and not them. I'm sure it's totally fine. It's
Yeah.
just I just can't even kept. You always think about like I can't imagine having a film made about my life. It'd be horrifying. It'd be so horrifying. It's a head trip, and so I'm always just like just really try to take care of the story and tell the right story. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially because even though that's part of his quote unquote identity, when people sometimes think who don't know them very well, oh, that's the guy that
yeah,
dated Fred. It's not like those were his wife for, 20 years. Then you could say, okay,
totally.
clearly that was part of his history. But no, this was just something kind of media
That's
created.
the
So
that's the part that I think about. I'm like, oh God, if a camera crew showed up to people that I dated in my 20s, I'd be horrified. And because it doesn't represent who you are. With Adam, especially though, it's incredibly reductive that
yep.
became the byline. Like dreadlock guy dates, you know, cast of friends,
Yep.
and you're like, yeah, but he also just released this record called Recovering the Sundays. It's pretty fucking good. Maybe check
Yeah.
that out. You know, there's
Yeah.
more to him.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how, I mean, Jeff Harkness wrote a book that sort of, was unauthorized biography, but kind of covers so many things. And part of what he does is you can see in kind of tracking sort of the press that they got over time, that sort of remained the reductive thing for so long after, which is sort of surprising, right? And it almost makes, I think it's part of why sort of recovering is a sort of a nice stopping point for the documentary, because how many years, but it, was probably an over and over thing of hearing about that, which is sort of I think the way you kind of framed it is sort of heartbreaking in a way that
Yeah.
that became such a thing for this person who was so dedicated to being a person who was acting in the music industry in a way that was true to themselves, that they sort of Adam sort of became reduced to this thing about, again, dating someone from Friends.
Yeah, I think it was incredibly frustrating for him
Yeah.
because considering how um, seriously he takes his music and his artistry, and to throw your entire just your entire self into your work, and then to have it kind of twisted and thrown back at you. I mean, it was a different time too. People suck, you know. It's
Yeah.
like, really do. And it was, that's was I included some of the harder lines in the film to hear come out of his mouth, and then to hear come out of like Mary Louise, like, a car would roll up next to them and people would yell, "County Crows suck," and it's like, man, what what who are we? Like, what in the world would compel that, And I would my editor, my team, we'd talk about this constantly and be like, are we making a movie and the log lines kind of like practice the golden rule? I don't know. Like, I tried to not be like some moralistic take on it, but it was
Yeah.
like, geez Louise, like this is crazy what that dude what he went through, And then when you couple it with what he was struggling with internally during that
Oh,
time,
yeah.
like pretty shattering.
And it's frustrating, I know, for although I sometimes like to have enemies anyway, but it's frustrating for me that even now to hear that right, it wasn't this was not some, corporate created band of people that didn't have
Um,
talent. I mean, Adam just knows music more than, almost any artist, and they're so talented, the band. And as you said, there's been a lot of press recently about how like great Gen X is, and I think there is a lot of great things to say about Gen
saw
X.
that
But when I
headline
do,
go by
and it's
the
been
other
it's
day.
it's been in a quite a I've seen a quite a theme over the last couple of years actually. But then I hear, but like, yeah, and then I think of somebody yelling at Adam in the street, and then I get mad about Gen X because that was also that generation.
I
So
mean, I'm in Gen X. I saw that it was like clickbait, and then
yeah.
maybe you can tell me what's the why is Gen X the greatest?
Oh, well,
Wait,
I think some of it had to do with that. I think some of it is like oh, they're not the boomers and they're not the boomers kids, and so they have that. They're
okay,
also like the last generation to grow up right,
pre-internet.
pre-internet really.
Yeah.
Um, and were more creative. And a lot of things that are super popular to this day started during that generation, maybe not by the Gen Xers themselves. And then,
Yeah,
like,
like MTV. Yeah.
yeah. And then
Okay.
even,
Yeah.
I mean, kids even still play with the same 80s toys and, today,
It's
right, and stuff
true.
like
Yeah.
that. So,
It
but,
is interesting how I do think that aspect of the movie, it feels very current in that way too, because in some ways it sort of presages the sort of modern thing of like people yelling at you on. I was literally actually looking at the comments on a YouTube video today of the Crows, and again, just negativity, but that's it, almost really to be expected because every comment section in everything on the internet today is negative. And so in some ways, like the story that it's telling about people's response to another and the other person is very, very modern. In a way, actually, I kind of feel like Have You Seen Me Lately as a song is very modern because of that, the sort of weird disconnection you can have from
Oh,
yourself that almost
and
like,
social media, yeah.
absolutely.
yeah, it's become
Absolutely.
a more universal sentiment than maybe it was in 1996.
Yeah.
That everyone is like, have you
Precedent.
seen me lately?
Precedent. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I will also say though that on that, like I went to the HBO Instagram or something and there and Facebook, and there's definitely people like that are so, oh wow, I always love them, like so excited. You can definitely tell there's people that have that album that as soon as they heard, and then they're like, oh, now they're getting nostalgic and they're gonna go watch the movie.
I think
What
so.
what one thing I definitely wanted to ask, and I know you talked about Bill Simmons in the Music Box series, and some of the footage you used. It's my, but even though Bill might have been the executive producer of a lot of these films, it seems like The Crows, maybe more than some of the other ones, are near and dear to his heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that probably was, I don't want to say pressure, but that's interesting. And then also, did you know, and I don't know how much of it you have or didn't get, but there has been this, and Chris maybe can talk to this more, but there had been this legend for years about all this archival footage from when they recorded in the recovering satellites in the house. and maybe there was a different documentary planned, and so, but this had been like kind of this legend building with Crows fans for years, and to finally get it, did you know anything about that, or have you heard, etc.?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of that we have a lot of that footage is in the documentary. So we have a lot, not a ton of it. There was so it's I'm blanking on their names right now. I can't believe this, but it's the filmmakers that went on to make that movie Little Miss Sunshine. The footage
Okay.
is insane. It's so cool to see how because it was the house is this cavernous giant Tudor mansion, and then they just tricked it out and all that. This was parts of these stories with some of that footage. That's if when you have these sort of heartbreaking, like, oh God, there's just not enough time to tell this story. But the stories of how they recorded it by like taking light bulbs down to the basement and crap, like smashing these light bulbs and recording that sound. I mean, that didn't make it into the film, which I was sad to me because I think that that's what the fans really want to know, that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, there was also a fire at the record label, so a lot of stuff was lost in that way. We have a pretty great archivist. I mean, this woman, Jackie Clary, she's phenomenal. She's like a private investigator, like a bloodhound for this kind of stuff. And so she unearthed a lot of cool stuff. And then, Dave Bryson, this is a filmmaker's dream. Bryson's like, oh, I did keep a tour journal during that time. It's like, you're kidding me? What? He's like, yeah, it's like photos and yeah, just ticket stubs. And it's like, turns out Bryson was sitting on like that time, like the first tour, first time we're going to Europe, like and you can just see the band was like they're just kids taking off, and then by the end of it you're like, oh no, what's coming next? Like it's like I'm like afraid for them. But that was that was some incredible find. But yeah, to answer your question, a lot of that footage is in the film. So
Yeah, Bryson could start his own museum and of kind of grows and nobody
yes,
knew.
but I'm like, who,
Um,
who does that? And that is so of a different era because now it would just be on your phone, you're just taking pictures. We're not like a thoughtful. I hope the pendulum swings back, and I hope that
Hmm.
people start to, take a pen to paper and journal and just try to remember. I'm trying to teach my daughters this. It's like the
but
artistic way of.
I saw that one of the reviews of the film already touched on that you kind of brought an aesthetic and a little vibe of some analog in there.
Cool. Is there a review? I haven't read
Yeah, I
it.
saw
Oh,
that,
dear
but
Lord.
somebody caught that who's probably of our generation, right? And they were. I think
Oh,
it was not a
yeah.
25-year-old reviewing it.
Yeah,
Like it was like
I think I did see that.
so,
Yeah,
oh, so yeah.
That's part of
our
what I like though.
fidelity.
So,
Go ahead. I was just gonna say there's a lot of like legitimate VHS-C. It's not a filter. It's like Brian Morrow, a producer of the film, and also he's always shooting like Super 8 or 16 mil or on our other films, but in this one he's like, "Okay, I think it's appropriate to shoot VHS-C because it's the 90s." So we would have Brian was constantly rolling VHS-C out of airplane, just everywhere we went. And it really worked. It gave it this tactile 90s sheen that
Hmm.
it was cool. I
yeah.
had a lot of fun with that.
Say, I love that. Yeah, I love that the bouncing back and forth between sort of that VHS and then the
Mhm.
sort of the high definition, even with some of the older footage and things where
Yeah.
you could both then see the sort of you get the benefit of high definition that it's 2025, but also yeah, that tactile feeling of like this is the 90s and all of the photos. That was actually one of the things I loved about the section on the Viper Room is all those people again who are not generally people who talk about that time period. And then the photos of it, where you're
Photos.
like, oh, this is what that looked like. Like I've been hearing about the Viper Room since
Yes.
probably since the 90s, and you're like, oh, this is what this looked like, you know.
Yes. And on all three of Randall Slavin, who is he's a professional photographer. His work is insanely beautiful. He was really generous to, let us peek in his files, photos of that time. Because there was no cell phones and because you had to Pantera Sarah was a hilarious and she would capture everything on these disposable cameras and then have it process it that night so that she could. It was just great. And then of course, Shannon was the manager of the Viper Room, and when she rolled up to her interview, she just like dumps all these photos on a table. Well, again, it's like a filmmaker's dream. You're like, they're like they're so Gen Xers are so they're so cool. They're just like, oh, yeah, I got some photos, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, how many? They're like, I don't know. We'll see on set. So I'm just like, just gonna have like 5 pictures, and I was just like throw it out. Oh dear God, this is great. This is wonderful. There are
Uh,
so many side stories that we could have gone down.
Yeah, as I say,
okay.
how long is the director's cut? Is it because Will is
Director's cut.
Eric and I'll watch 7 hours if you need.
Yeah, we will.
We're here.
There's no director's cut. HBO owns this movie.
Okay.
There was a lot. I was texting with my editor this morning. I was like, how many hours did we cut this down from? I was like, oh Lord, I don't know. Oh, a lot. Over at least 40. I mean, there's a lot of footage. A
Wow.
lot of interviews, a lot of, then you think like just you have different endings that you try out because we
Yeah.
filmed the show at Red Rocks, and it was really beautiful. It was so beautiful. And when I say beautiful, the songs were beautiful. It was really focused a lot on audience members that were just emotionally, in literal tears. When Adam plays that Jackson C. Frank song, Blues Run the Game, when he plays
Mm.
that live, people just lose it. I mean, it was it was like he can hold, I don't know how many people are seated in that venue, but the capacity, but he holds them all in
Mm.
that space, and it
Yeah.
was a really profound thing to see. So yeah, I wanted to show more of that in the film too, but it's just weird the way storytelling is. There's a balance. So if you stay a little too long in this performance, then it turns into that kind of a movie, and you're always just trying to negotiate the balance of it all.
Especially with documentaries. Yeah, so as we hinted 100 times, if in a year from now you're allowed to release other things, it would be the first request for us would be the longer form interviews of the other band members.
Yeah, yeah.
So get Bill on the case.
I wish that I was a stakeholder in that conversation, but
Did
unfortunately not.
all jokes aside, though, going back to Bill and either as it was a work in progress or final cut, want to talk about his happiness or like, is this what you're looking for, Bill, as a super fan, kind of thing?
Oh yeah, but Bill's not the kind of he's not the kind of guy that's like he's not like the king and we're like court jesters.
Right, right. Not
He
yeah.
doesn't, he's a very, very light touch. And we hear this all the time. It's like people love to say, we're filmmaker friendly. And you're like, oh yeah, well, we'll see we'll see
Yeah.
in a year how friendly you are. And it is actually the case. It's very true with both with HBO and with Bill in the Ringer. He was never like his notes were he never had his thumb on the project in a way. It was like questions more like, have you considered this angle, or have you thought about this? And so it would prompt um me to go back and go, man, okay, I haven't done a good enough job to sell this point yet. I need to go
Hmm.
back and dig deeper and refine this or whatnot. And that was really good. And then in terms of like what Adam thinks about the film, because I know that question's coming too, he's a music guy, and he I think if he, in his ideal world, it's just loaded with more music. I mean, that's what he saw. I know he was really a fan of the Led Zeppelin doc that just came
Hmm.
out, which is awesome.
Yes.
It's so good. I don't get high anymore, but it makes you feel like to smoke pot. I was like, do I need to start smoking pot again? It's that good. But I think that Adam would have wanted more of that. But I can't even imagine what, like I said, of what it's like to watch a movie starring you about you. And
Yeah,
so
especially as you said, it gets
I
into
like
the
that.
personal. Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah, you got me
Yeah.
thinking. I really think of Adam, had nothing to do with your story. I bet you Adam's part of it is like, oh, I wish they would also make a second film that focuses on my other albums
Yep.
because they have a lot of awesome, fantastic songs that nobody knows.
Yeah.
And if somebody makes a movie about it, maybe they'll actually listen and then buy
Yeah.
the album. So yeah.
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 Which is like the most reasonable response.
Yeah.
Oh, dang, that's a shame. Where's all these other songs, all these other records. So
Yeah.
I will
thank
say,
you.
I did think the volume of music was pretty good. I particularly really liked the way you guys cut that the sort of the SNL section, like
Oh
with the
yeah.
comments, and it's a lot of the footage, enough that it was
Yeah.
sort of like, but the comments from everyone as it's happening, I had like kind of like goosebumps when you kind of get to the end there, and they're like, yeah, we know this is basically because everyone again, it's part of the story, right? You know, they play SNL, they
And then
explode, but it
and
really you feel it in the way they're sort of describing it there.
that's the cautionary tale part of the film where it's like, ooh, careful, careful what's coming. Because nothing is going to be the same after this moment. Your life as you know it is going to be different from here on out.
Mm.
Is yeah, that thank you though, because those are hard. It's really it's really expensive to license like an entire performance. So you have to kind of break it up in a way if you want to use it. And so trying to use that performance as a moment and then bring everybody into it to you know like Rashomon to tell their side and their side and here's what I was feeling from the stage or whatnot and then have what Adam was feeling and then what he dealt with but not lose the because it's jarring when you go away from music and then you come back you know to make sure that it wasn't jarring so then the score has to work to fill in the in between parts and it's a real that moment in the film is something I'm really proud of because we were worked our asses off on that one.
Speaking of the story that you're trying to tell, one thing I think this is an interesting question, but one thing when I was reading your bio and reading about the film is did you either relate or project or have some feeling about um, and I know it's not exactly the same because he was already well established, but you're right. You live in Hollywood, or I'm not saying you live in Hollywood, but you
I live
moved to
in
the
Eagle
Hollywood yeah, to the you moved to
I
the
live next to
Hollywood
Pasadena.
ecosystem,
Yeah.
and that you're from out of state, and then right, you're an outsider until you're an insider, and then also Adam moved to Hollywood. Now he did it after the success of his first album, but I don't know. Did you have any thoughts about that or relate to that a little bit, or thought about
Um,
that?
I let yeah, of course. There was a lot of common, you know, Cheryl when I made this documentary about Cheryl Crow, she'd had the same thing. Everybody kind of like you moved to LA and then oh, secret front doors handles getting fixed. Um yeah, there was a lot of things that I could see parallels. This is the city where it's the city of artists and it's the city where you go to try to act on your dreams and it either happens or it doesn't and that's what gives this place such a interesting um vibe and it's a divisive place as Dave Bryson or sorry as Emmer Gluck says in the movies like you know oh God LA like when Adam moved to LA they were just like because they're from the Bay you know it's like that dynamic is so funny to me as an outsider it's hilarious but you know, like, oh, it's the city of cheese and all things terrible. Then it's like, yeah, but no, you've never actually been there. People that say this never actually, you know, been there. I had the same perception of this place too. I lived in Chicago for a long time, and it's not a very LA friendly place. But yeah, I think LA in that era of time was a really special time for this city. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't, I forgot to ask it. Am I on camera right now in terms of,
Yes. Yeah.
no, I know that we're on
Oh.
camera now, but will this, I was just thinking of moving to a back room where it's a little quieter.
Oh, it's
But
okay. Well, yeah, we can't. No, we hear you fine, and
all right, great.
there's
I can
not
hear you
too
back.
much not too much left anyway.
Okay.
Chris, I think you were going to ask, or maybe not about. I guess just real quick, just about yourself. Do you about that? I know you're doing other projects and have done other projects, but obviously now you've done a couple of music documentaries. Was that something that you were strongly motivated to tell music stories, or you just did one, and then what happens is you do a great one, and then people want you for more, or etc. Did you want to talk about that part of
Yeah,
your
it's
career?
definitely a combination of that. I just think I'm just really grateful. I feel like I made this film with my team about Hal Ashby because I really I loved his films and I loved his work. And we didn't have any money. We crowdfunded, um, and just kind of, you know, did it for free for years. But we took it seriously. And that film kind of changed my life. I think that people that really liked that movie, are also have good taste in music. And so out of that came these sort of music things would come my way. But like I'm a music freak as well. And was college DJ and worked at record stores and that
Mm,
whole, and went have been on many tours with bands across Europe. And so I understand that world. And when the projects have come to me and I have a chance to, because they don't just come and they just give you a film. You got to compete for it and you go up against other directors and,
mm,
try to convince people why you should be the one to make the movie. I just take it like I think musicians are they have superpowers and they're like, they're so special. They're just in a different breed. And I find it fascinating to figure out or just observe what makes them do what they do, like how they work their magic. It's like they're casting spells all the time. It's like Adam casts a spell over Red Rocks and it's freaky. It's
That's
like so
true.
impressive. So yeah, I have fought really hard to get the films, and it just happens that they are a lot of. I mean, I have another music documentary that I think is too contracted up to disclose what it is, but it'll come out soon in the spring,
mm.
and that's a totally different kind of a music documentary.
Great.
Woman that is phenomenal. So I find them to be really, really fun too.
Yeah, and thanks for focusing on his artistic integrity or the band's artistic integrity, because I almost think because of the way they hit with those singles and Adam's Dreads that yeah, if there's people that only know them and don't even and quote unquote don't like them, I
Yeah.
think that they think that they are not right that kind of artist. Oh, that and that's exactly what they are, is artists of integrity. It's so clear if you dive in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know? Can I ask you? Do you? You might not know all their songs, but do you know the song "Amy Hit the Atmosphere" since you started following them? That's
I
one of
had,
their songs.
yeah, which one, what record's that on?
That's on "This Desert Life," which is the David
Yeah, the
Lowery
next one.
one.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, or
No,
after, yeah.
that record's fantastic. That record's great. If it
But
would like it would have been cool to have be like, it's the first three records that we can cover because there's a lot of good jams off that one.
yeah,
Yes.
I just laughed because when I saw Amy, we
Oh yeah.
that your name comes up sometimes when we mention that song. Chris, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask
I'm
Amy?
actually curious about because you said you toured with bands in Europe. Have
Oh
you?
my gosh. Yes. I toured with a little band called Of Montreal.
Oh, okay.
I lived in Athens for a little while,
Hmm.
and in actually the composer, I say it's always weird to say my editor, my composer. The composer that I am lucky enough to work with on all of my films, Heather McIntosh, was like just a dear. She's been a dear friend of mine. She was in Neutral Milk Hotel, and if you're into that kind of
Hmm.
a scene, there's another band in Chicago named Joan of Arc that I did a lot of touring with,
I've
but
heard of them, yeah.
it's like yeah, like which oddly enough, when I went to Adam's house to film him, I was like looking down at he had a bunch of music books, guitar tablatures and things. And he had this band, American Football, which are old friends of mine and in another life ago. But it was, yeah, these things kind of they come at you, at least in my life. Everything is starting to come full circle, which is it's a fun, yeah, it's a fun time. Or maybe I'm just like a mom now, so I just notice everything. Oh,
Same.
So,
all those hours in the sprinter really paid off.
so maybe one other final question I'm thinking of, and I guess you could, well, not answer this at all, or maybe you'd have two parts, which is that like now that it's complete and it's going to be out, and then in a couple months it'll be in some ways the review mirror, even though I hope people keep watching it and picking up traction, is there, I don't want to say one thing you learned, but do you think in the end, one thing either you reflected on, and it could be about the band, like, oh, Adam said this about the band, and it was so interesting, and it's always going to stick with me, but also could be just a life lesson that has nothing to do with the band itself, right? Sometimes Adam says something that you relate to your own life, etc. Are there any kind of takeaways personally that you had after working so long on this documentary?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. Well, the when we were talking about the Hal Ashby film, what was the byline of that? It was like
What did I say there in the beginning? Ashby's uncompromising nature
okay.
played out as a
Un,
cautionary tale of art
yeah,
versus commerce.
that's so uncompromising nature, uncompromising artists, and how that's a cautionary tale uh, is something that I find wildly fascinating. And it's only going to get weirder and weirder and worse and worse. It's like as capitalism takes a foothold and puts its boot on art, how do artists negotiate that? And it comes up in my life, and it's the word that I find is was Adam was uncompromising, because he, like with SNL, he also, we didn't have time to tell this story, but I'm sure you guys know, like he didn't, they screwed with him on the cover of Rolling Stone in terms of like what shirt he was wearing, and he was like, no, man, I'm not changing my shirt. It's like he is authentically who he is, and did just pushed back on basically anything that ran counter to what he wanted the music to sound like, or the band to be, you know, who they were. And I think that that is what makes him just a really dynamic person. He did not capitulate, and he paid for it. I mean, he really paid the price
Mm.
with a lot of institutions. Because yeah, in this, people don't easily forget. Like in the film industry, you can get blackballed for XYZ. There's just
Yeah.
it's insular, and everybody knows everybody, and you're not gonna, if you push back against the system in a way that he did, and it happened. It was sort of a big point that I try to make in the Hal Ashby films. He did the same thing. But it's because they're artists. They're not this. They're not. They're not salespeople. They don't have degrees in marketing. They're artists, and it messes with them, as it should. So yeah, it come when I get frustrated in my own lane. I constantly look to these guys for how they've handled themselves and how they dealt with it, and also like maybe pick your battles sometimes, on
Oh,
some.
right. Right. I think he said a couple of times. I think he talked about, what is it, Top of the Pops or
Oh,
something, that he regretted not,
yes.
in retrospect, he regretted not doing it. But the other
It,
thing is, I've heard Adam interviewed, and even if he was right about some of the things he stood up
yeah,
for, a lot of it, about 95% of it.
exactly.
So,
Exactly.
that's always a tough balance, right? Because you could hurt yourself, but if you're right, you have to, what else do you have if not your integrity, right?
It's integrity. That's what it's all about. And all of the people that I've made films with are about, it's a common theme, the integrity, a
Okay.
component. It's like it's a common theme.
Well, thank you so much. This was
Oh, my
just a
pleasure.
lot of fun, and yeah, and we did not bring up Counting Crows trivia or anything like that. And
I would not win that game show, but I would watch the game show. Thank
And
you
so
guys
thank you.
so
It's a joy. I mean, as people obviously who spend a lot of time thinking about Counting Crows, it's a real joy to have a 90-minute film that's kind of so wonderful to sit down and watch and reflect on as fans. So thank you for
so
leading
much.
the team that kind of brought that to life. Yeah.
Oh goodness. I mean, I am lucky. I am grateful and lucky, and have so much gratitude around this project. So thank you so
and and
much.
if it wasn't good, like you every so often you hear of a project that gets done and the director does not do a good job, and then it gets shelved and it never gets made. And
Yeah, it's
so
my worst
obviously,
nightmare.
so thank you for
Because you never
creating.
know. You're like, is it good? Because you're in the bubble,
Yep.
Oh God, I hope to God people, this
Yeah.
res I just want it to resonate, and I think it has. I think it will. So
So thank you again, Amy, and hopefully
thank you.
we'll talk to you again at some point in the future.
Yes, thank you.
And thanks for listening here at Sullivan Street. Goodbye.